Alright, so welcome to One Punch Combo. We've got a very interesting video here. I actually was not going to do this video because people were being weird. If you've seen my YouTube short or possibly other social media where I talk about how I tried to do this video before, Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter, but people were being very weird. Somebody said I was acting as an official agent. I don't know why you would think some random person in chat or on social media was official agent. And then there were a number of people who were saying I would rather the world explode than this idea come to fruition, which I don't really understand because if it's not for you, let's just say Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter happens. If it's not for you, then don't play it. I mean, I guess, you can do the whole political thing and make your entire existence about going against it, but yeah. So we just got some more information on that, which I pretty much had the script done anyway, so might as well do this video. I was going to add graphics and stuff, but like I said, people were being really weird, so I got very unmotivated to do the video. But yeah, let's go ahead with this. Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter. Well, I'm sure many of us have thought of this project. We've been told in so many words it isn't possible. I don't think that's true. Modern Capcom and modern NetherRealm have done plenty that has made this go from a fanboy's dream to almost reality. Even more recently, well, it's a little bit outdated again, this script is from a bit ago. Even more recently, Street Fighter 6's director has said he'd welcome Mortal Kombat. Actually, no, this is the most recent part. I did edit this. The Street Fighter 6 director, Nakayama, said he would welcome Mortal Kombat characters, specifically calling out Sub-Zero. Let's talk about a bit about both companies. Capcom is probably the easier one in the fact that versus games were their bread and butter at one point, crossovers, mostly with fighting game developers, but most notably with Marvel. Though they had a bit of a dark age in a Icarus reaching for the esports sun type of way, with a change in leadership as well as the company realizing that if you make good games, the audience will come. We saw that in Monster Hunter World. With Street Fighter 6 being as successful as it is, there is very little reason for Capcom to pump the brakes on endeavors in that arena. There is a slight problem, however. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite sucked. Of course, this was written a little bit in the past where we've had some revelations where we have the Marvel vs. Capcom collection, and also you have Maximilian Dude really putting his money where his mouth is in terms of supporting fighting games, where he's basically giving us the expansion or the ultimate of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which is really interesting. But yeah, so we're not really here to debate, how people felt about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. There is a Matt McMuscles video on it if you are completely out of the know. But yeah, let's discuss the implications of this. This isn't the 90s anymore, for those that don't know. Years and years ago, the MCU didn't exist, and in fact, DC was actually doing much better than Marvel. Marvel was struggling to the point that they ended up selling the movie rights to their characters like Hulk, which still has implications today. Really, Capcom might have even been a bigger force to be reckoned with at that time. Marvel was very close to bankruptcy, which explains why they were, so willing to lend out the license and everything like that. Since I last wrote this draft, Marvel vs. Capcom have repaired their relationship to release a brand new and awesome collection. While it's an interesting wrinkle, Nakayama has opened his palm out, much like the recent Ryu and Cyclops promotional arts for Marvel vs. Capcom. And as I will discuss a bit later, NetherRealm has had their hand outstretched for quite a while, open to the idea as well. This was also written before Terry and Mai were announced for Street Fighter 6. I do have another video And my channel's a bit confusing because YouTube, in their infinite wisdom, decided to shut down my YouTube channel or YouTube channels for no reason, all simultaneously. And I recently checked back on that, and you can, I don't know if that's new, but you can appeal that. I appealed and instantly got a decision, so I don't know if it was like a false reporting thing. But the thing is, some of my channels weren't even public. Like, yes, they existed, and I guess you could search them, but there were no videos. So I don't even know if someone were to false report me, how they would figure that out. But anyway, yeah, so the Terry Mai announcement. Additionally, we've seen a ton of crossovers from other fighting game devs, including but not limited to Arika, Arc System Works, Bamco, SNK, almost making Capcom the odd man out in this situation. Again, did not know Terry and Mai, Marvel's Capcom Collection. Was not aware of that when I wrote this, but it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. NetherRealm has been similarly conservative with this, but we'll be discussing them in a moment. And while they may not have been doing a ton of crossovers in the esports age of Capcom, there were a couple. Smash had Ken and Ryu, Power Rangers got Chun and Ryu, and also redesigned them. Akuma joined Tekken 7, and quite a few Street Fighters showed up in Fortnite. So what does this all mean? Yes, Street Fighter 6 is going to live long and have a lot of content, but what else can Capcom do? A new crossover project is probably the answer. Capcom, for the most part, was rocking two fighting games. They would generally have, a Street Fighter and also a versus game. For most people, that would be Marvel's Capcom, but there was also the Capcom vs. SK stuff. So I'd imagine now that you have new leadership and the dust has settled, people like Street Fighter 6, people like this new development squad, the RE engine is doing really good. A lot of people like to throw out Cap God. I'm not too fond of that because people were throwing out the Cap God title when Street Fighter sucked. Street Fighter 5, esports, blah, 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 Marvel's Capcom Infinite was a wash. Yeah, so Street Fighter 6 is, we already talked about that. So, a new crossover project. This does not have to be with Mortal Kombat, and to be completely honest, it's even at the time of writing this, before we knew about Terry and Mai and Street Fighter 6, it's probably going to be Capcom versus SNK 3. And even the head development team of Street Fighter 6, or not Street Fighter 6, of SNK said if Terry and Mai do very well in Street Fighter 6, then the thing, quote unquote, is more possible. So this really is, a tale of swords and sorcery, and possibilities. But yeah, let's move on to NetherRealm. They've always been a fairly walled-off garden, most notably collaborating with DC to release Injustice in a sequel. That's mostly going to be in-house because WB has DC and has NetherRealm. Also, the sequel to Injustice. Their history is a bit shorter and more mysterious, especially after they officially became NetherRealm. But we do have a bit to go on. Initially, Mortal Kombat was a rival to Street Fighter. It attracted attention, both good and bad, from the adult direction the game took. Mortal Kombat vs. DC was not a good game, but it sold well. And I think their fate was sealed from that point. And in Injustice 1, we got to see what Scorpion would look like if the venerable Jim Lee had designed him. And in Injustice 2, we got even more Mortal Kombat flavor with Raiden and Sub-Zero being in it, but also some very interesting additions as DLC. It wasn't just the video game characters anymore, but they reached out into comicdom in general with Hellboy and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Between this and Smash, it felt like Mugen was becoming a reality. And they continued the cameos with the K, even to this day, with a super heroic sort of cadre of guests in Mortal Kombat 1. The crossovers for NetherRealm are a bit harder to find, but they are there. it's a bit more common in their publishing house, like Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Reptile, Raiden being an NBA Jam, Johnny Cage showing up in a now defunct mobile game, WWE Immortals. But the smoking gun in this case is the fact that Ed Boon himself, and of course my camera is freaking out. Let's see if we can fix that very quickly. Nope. Let's see. Okay, there we go. But it's let's see, Johnny Cage, we already talked about that, but Ed Boon himself has said, has revealed that they offered to collaborate with Capcom to have a guest fighter or do a full-blown Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter. So that's huge. So we already talked about how Nakayama-san on the Street Fighter side said he'd be willing to take a guest character. But the thing is, when you talk about collaboration and possibilities in gaming, you don't do specifics. You know, you might say, wow, it would sure be great to collaborate with Capcom, or wow, it would be great to, you know, make another Shaolin Monks, or, you know, buy the game and see what happens. You know, you don't talk specifics because that's how you can get in trouble. And even I sort of briefly mentioned that with the SNK team basically saying without saying that Capcom versus SNK 3, or, you know, whatever, SVC Chaos 2 if they want to continue that, or just say SVC 2024, say that that's possible if Terry and Mai do well in Street Fighter 6. So you don't necessarily speak specifics because that can get you in trouble. Not just from fans getting mad, but that is a factor, but also, you know, in Europe they have very stringent consumer protection laws. Australia a bit too. So, you know, if you say if people buy Street Fighter 6 Terry and Mai, will get a SNK versus Capcom 2, and that doesn't actually happen, in Europe you actually have some legal ground. I don't know how much, but it's definitely possible, and something that is going to scare companies. So my point in saying all that is they are talking specifics. They want this to happen, and they're trying to make this happen. But yeah, so both NetherRealm and Capcom are looking to continue their fighting game success, and even though we've got this Marvel's Capcom fighting game collection, we may not actually see a new game in that series anytime soon. But it is good to know that they're doing better. But yeah, let's discuss the game itself a bit. So now that we've established the fact that this could actually happen, I think we've got to address the elephant in the room. Capcom wouldn't want people to have an official Chun-Li in a game for girl purposes, but I do think there's a couple solutions to this problem, actually. The thing is, there are evil characters in Street Fighter, and even from certain good characters, we have moves that more or less look like fatalities, if not fatal blows. And on top of that, we have evil versions of the most popular Street Fighters: Shadow Lady, Eva Ryu, Violent Ken. So whether Capcom is only willing to lend their evil characters to the game or use the evil versions, it works out. And, you know, there is a very pivotal moment in Street Fighter lore, is someone giving into the darkness and attacking their opponent so viciously it leaves a huge scar on their chest. This actually happened. You know, this is Street Fighter. Didn't happen in a game, but Sagat has that scar and Ryu did the deed. But as a side note, I do question whether modern Capcom would care about this. Fortnite obviously paid a lot of money, but Ryu has guns, lasers, grenades, famous people showing up in Call of Duty despite having no combat credentials. Nintendo, when bringing Bayonetta over, asked for her to be in Nintendo-based outfits to be more scandalous and not less. If there's ever a time to break the seal on a Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter, it's now. Even still, Mortal Kombat is basically banned in Japan for its content. This doesn't have to be a death sentence for the game, however. With the Street Fighter brand involved, and an entry that's not centered around gory after round antics, this may be exactly what Mortal Kombat needs to go from kusoge to an actual option in the Japanese gamer's mind. So, you know, another solution besides we're going to put the gore in, blah, 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 would be not to go for that M for mature rating, but to actually just go the Injustice route. We've seen 3 examples of PG Mortal Kombat characters, and as the reception of Mortal Kombat 11 improved, you can definitely go too far in the direction of realism and fatalities. And a grimness. But I personally thought that Injustice and its sequel were very good about showcasing how powerful these heroes are. And even, you know, there's some fun lines from like Sub-Zero after beating his opponent in a round, saying, "Be glad this isn't the tournament." So still alluding to how brutal things could be, but things aren't actually brutal. Let's see. And I have a feeling that doing it this way would make both parties happy. We have seen both in Marvel vs. Capcom games and Street Fighter games where basically the cameraman is getting killed. So if they really need to toss in some fatalities or what have you, and I think actually that was in one of the Injustices. I remember like Sub-Zero freezing the camera and you know, you don't actually see it, but he's ripping the cameraman's or camera person's heart out. So, especially with Dragon Ball FighterZ, we don't really need to see extreme gore to show how powerful a character is. I know some people might say, but there absolutely has to be fatalities or else what's the point? And I think there's even a solution for that. If we reach into Mortal Kombat's history, there are plenty of things to do at the match end without it being a literal fatality. Street Fighter's DJ would definitely, you know, totally do a friendship. Magical characters like Rose would be at home turning their opponent into a card. And, you know, seeing Fong turn into an actual bird as an animality, that could be a thing. But Babalities would definitely be a bit of a flex, however implemented. And so I think it would also be fun to do. Ultimately, all the way back to Mortal Kombat 1, not the most recent one that people are really down on, and it seems like NetherRealm has finally lost the casual audience, which is definitely something to consider. Liu Kang in the original Mortal Kombat had a non-fatal fatality, so it wouldn't be sacrilege if a character doesn't dismember their opponent and instead does I'm coining the phrase, it needs some workshopping, but respectality. You know, that's definitely something that could happen. On a bit of a more somber note, you may have noticed that NetherRealm skipped out on Injustice 3 as they thought they were going from NK to Injustice, as we've seen with the past couple cycles. Unfortunately, he who shall not be named probably scared NetherRealm into not risking making a crossover game with a license they may not have in the future. This same fear is still there, and will reduce chances of this actually happening. Then there's also some rumors surrounding NetherRealm about how MK1 has finally lost the casual audience, with many looking at Tekken in its stead. Again, this could be an opportunity for Mortal Kombat to refocus and earn new fans, as well as let old fans there's still value in the brand. I don't know a ton about that. Unfortunately, I've been very busy, and I never was heavy on Mortal Kombat outside of like the now we know they're bad, the deception and stuff like that. But it really seems like people have turned a corner on MK1. Like, I would have never predicted Mortal Kombat players going to Tekken, but it just seems like the offline stuff is not fun. The story is good to a point. And I think as an overarching thing, Mortal Kombat 1, it was very interesting that they brought in cameos with a K, but people don't like cameos, you know, especially on that casual level. People are only going to want to learn to play one character, but if you have to have a cameo, then obviously you have to at least learn 2 characters. And you know, there were cameos that weren't playable, which I think is fine to an extent. But I did even watch a video yesterday where somebody was saying like Johnny Cage and a number of other characters, they've been playable for like 4 games straight, and we've got some cameos that haven't been playable since the 3D era. And some of the cameos are really cool reimagining of like some of the shittier characters. Like, I don't think anybody, I'm sure there's some Mortal Kombat fans, so don't at me, some Mortal Kombat fans who, I don't really think anybody cared about Movado, but he came back as a cameo, and he's actually pretty cool now. He's like a evil Spider-Man. So there was some reiteration that did well, and you know, some of the reimagining of these characters was pretty good, but it really seems like Mortal Kombat 1 sort of burned the bridge, where if you don't have casuals, because they had casuals in sales, and no matter what, Mortal Kombat could always claim that, but apparently that isn't even the case anymore. But I'm getting a little bit too off script here. But yeah, now that we've discussed the why of Mortal Kombat vs. Street Fighter, I'd like to discuss the how. I think development should be in Capcom's hands, while some may hiss as a vampire exposed to sunlight at that suggestion. If we look at Injustice, even NetherRealm has realized to have mass appeal, holding back to block was no bueno. Or actually, it would... excuse me, I've got that backwards. Holding a button to block was no bueno. It should actually be the phrasing. And I get it. One thing I can really respect about NetherRealm is they really kind of just do their thing regardless of what anyone else says. You know, their projectiles have no collision and are often hit scan. This does seem to make some like really crappy tournaments, and Sonic Fox is winning no matter what, so I don't really understand why anyone enters tournaments besides Sonic Fox at this point. You know, they killed off their main character for a number of games, and he came back as a zombie. A number of characters regularly rotate off the roster. They added cameos to MK1, you know, I have no idea why. Let's make these normals look really weird, and the game still sells. So there's obviously some credence to that, even if it's slow. It's kind of dissipating, or we've reached the straw breaking the camel's back point. I'd feel more comfortable with Capcom as the dev, as they have solid credentials and will support the game past the 2-year mark, something the Mortal Kombat team doesn't really do. While the Capcom esports era was pretty dark, they seem to be able to pull together with new ideas with Street Fighter 6. And I think as a side bonus, Capcom developing this game would A, let us use the RE engine, and B, give us really interesting versions of the characters, while also giving NetherRealm a break to think about the next one, which I think is sorely needed, no matter how you feel about Injustice, Mortal Kombat, and NetherRealm. It seems like that's really necessary. As for gameplay, I do think variations would make sense, as the game has big shoes to fill. Showing reverence for one of the stronger playing Mortal Kombats in the form of Mortal Kombat X with variations would make a lot of sense. Also, this game may bring a lot of older players out of retirement just to see something they never thought would happen. Having, in terms of variations, having a classic Ryu, a modern Ryu, Street Fighter 6 Ryu, and Evil Ryu, I think would be pretty good variations, and could play both to nostalgia and widen the game's options. Another option is isms or grooves. Those of you who have played, I think it's Street Fighter Alpha, you know, I didn't really play Alpha, but I know for a fact it's in Capcom vs. SNK. There would obviously be players in both camps that haven't ever touched the other's games, at least not seriously. You know, for example, a Street Fighter groove would have an EX meter, allow for parrying, have you hold back to block. The Mortal Kombat groove could allow breakers, sprinting, allow grievous wounds that would affect the character's mobility or damage output. Again, these are just suggestions. I have no idea why somebody was saying they thought I was an official person working for Capcom and or NetherRealm, but just suggestions. I'm sure if this actually happens, they're going to iron that out. Let's see. And Mortal Kombat vs. Street Fighter groove would mix the two together, or simply just be the modern mode that is currently in Street Fighter 6 of Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter. But yeah, that's kind of it for my video. I was not going to make this video because people were being weird, but maybe if people watch this video, and to be completely honest, I've gotten more views than I've gotten in years of my videos, which is cool. So who knows, maybe we can continue this series and like make a hypothetical Mortal Kombat vs Street Fighter, look at the roster, look at the mechanics, maybe look at story, because that would be fun. But I do like to have community involvement, which is polls or feedback. But a lot of people are being really weird because fighting games are tribalistic, unfortunately, where it's gotten a lot better in the last couple years, but you know, everybody, Capcom players were Capcom players, Mortal Kombat players were Mortal Kombat players, and it wasn't just you didn't play the other game, you hated the other game and you would talk shit about it. So I think there's still a lot of bad blood there. Like, I think a lot of the player bases are good and cooperating with each other, minus like Smash is its own walled garden, Dead or Alive, that community is kind of its own walled garden. But I think everybody else is just kind of like, cool, you want to play our game? Get on board and let's do this thing. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, folks. My channel situation is kind of weird, but I do actually have my separate channels up now. So this is most likely going to be on the One Punch Combo channel, along with the previous video. And yeah, so let me know, leave a comment or a like if you would like to try and make this work. It would especially help if we could have some community involvement and maybe some community figures who won't get yelled at, unlike me, you know, random black man online who's going to get yelled at and people aren't going to want to cooperate. So thanks for tuning in.